Member Nathan Field,
Present.
Councilmember Xanthia Oliver,
Present.
Councilmember James Spadola,
Present.
Council President Trippy Congo.
Here.
Do we have any other council members on the line that are not a part of this committee? I would like to acknowledge you at this time. Okay, we're going to jump right into our agenda, and I have a minor change here. Instead of going over our resolutions first, I'm going to switch them around, and then we're going to put our ordinances up first. So we are going to start with an ordinance to authorize and approve an amendment to the master services agreement between the City of Wilmington and Paymentus Corporation for an online payment process and bill presentment system. This is sponsored by Councilmember Johnson. And do we have someone here to speak to this particular ordinance?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Brett Taylor. I am the Director of Finance for the City of Wilmington.
Welcome.
Thank you. I do want to make one clarification. The ordinance for the Paymentus amendment is coupled with the ordinance for the systems and software solution amendment. And I'd like to address both if that is possible.
Yes, you may.
Thank you very much. Tonight I'm presenting some information to City Council Finance in hopes that there would be an ordinance for two multi-year contracts. One to Systems and Software Corporation and the other to Paymentus Corporation. What I want to do is give you an overview of, and I have a short presentation to talk about our plans to transform our utility billing system. Okay. So on the first slide, the Munis system, if you go to the Munis system is a billing module. We have a utility billing module within the Munis system that was built sometime in 2006. It was implemented in 2006. We've gone through various upgrades over the years. But what we're finding is that there are some limitations with regard to that Munis system and a utility billing for utility billing functionality. In addition, we've shifted from a monthly billing, or from a quarterly billing to a monthly billing scenario. So we've actually tripled the number of transactions that are coming into the city and going out to customers. We have 36,000 customers. We are a medium-sized utility. And as such, when it was implemented, the Munis Enterprise Resource Planning System, it's called an ERP system, was not built specifically for utility billing. We've made it work over the last 17 years, but the state of the art of the technology has grown so much over those 17 years, we felt it was time to take a look at it again. The Munis system module had limits on things such as payment processing, and it also made it more difficult for customers to pay bills or get bills corrected during when they receive them. And we've been looking at the data over the last several years, particularly from our call center, and we're realizing that of the 36,000 bills that we send out, we get about 3,000 calls a month on just questions regarding utility bills. And I think that's a function of both how we send the bills out, how customers look at the bills, and how they pay them. So from that standpoint, we thought it's time for us to take a look at a new system. Next slide. So a new utility billing system will have built into it greater automated bill generation. processing, and payment interfaces. And what this does is it takes a little bit of the manual intervention out so that we can go ahead and automate and be able to focus our time and attention more on exceptions that get kicked out of the billing system due to bad errors. Instead of responding to bad bills going out, we would rather generate good bills going out and then take a look at customers that may have questions about their bill, such as consumption issues, et cetera. We felt that that was probably better time spent. A state-of-the-art utility billing system, would have features that customer service representatives would be able to look at and be able to help customers right there and then on one screen. Right now, they have to go to multiple screens. They have different data sets that they have to look at, and that takes up time with talking to customers over the telephone. Likewise, the bills that go out are often complicated. However, due to the fact that everything was customized in the Munis system, we can't easily change the bills to make them reader-friendly. So what we want to do is try to simplify the bills so that people can understand exactly what they're getting and what they're being charged for. Likewise, a new utility system will allow customers to go online, much like you do with your credit cards or your bank statements, and be able to have one look at their utility bills. Instead of getting a pop-up that you type in an address now and all of a sudden it tells you what your bill is, they'll be able to look at all of their account history, their payment history, all the bills and consumption over a period of time. There'll be dashboards that will make it much more customer friendly. With that said, we're also going to look at adopting property tax and L&I fees as part of that same one-look system, so that when you look at your account as a citizen, you're able to look at your property tax, utility bills, and your L&I fees all at the same time. Another state-of-the-art piece of this is when you make a payment. Right now, if you make a payment online or you make a payment by mail, there's a certain period of time before that payment is processed. That has caused many, many questions on the part of customers, because if they pay on time but we don't process it on time, the system now automatically charges you a penalty and an interest charge. What we want to do is, with this automated system, your payment will be credited in real time. That'll save you from having to go back and talk to the city about having those charges removed, despite the fact that you had paid it on time. Customers can also pay all of their accounts all on one system. This is why we're coupling the Paymenta system with this new S&S system. That's why we're considering both contracts. And I'll get to the Paymenta system here in a minute. But you'd be able to go ahead and make those payments. Next slide. Next slide, please. Oh, back one, please. There you go. Now, we have spent the last 14 months doing a deep dive into utility systems across the country. We use Black & Veatch. They're our consultant on the project. They do all of our water and sewer rate studies and the like. They determined that the Munis system, right now, we're losing about $3.5 million because of in revenue due to unbilled consumption, errors in bills, post-payment adjustments, and lost interest, because money coming in is not getting processed fast enough. By going to a new system, we're looking at, just off the top, just with the new system, about $2.5 million savings.
Wow.
A year. That means that's $2.5 million of that $3.5 million in lost revenue will be coming back to the city. The payback on the system will be will be less than 3 years. And we'll talk about the numbers here in a minute. The remaining $1 million in savings is going to happen because we're going to make some operational changes within the finance department to accommodate this new automated system. And those operational changes hopefully are going to correct errors, make sure that people's bills are being credited on time. We're going to be making some operational adjustments with regard to appeals for people with high consumption, how to deal with spikes and the like. By going into an implementation of a new utility system, we're going to get a chance to really lift the hood, take a look at the inside of our operational capacity, and figure out how best way and create more efficiencies. And that's going to yield us some additional savings. Next slide. The city is recommending that we enter into an agreement with Systems and Software Corporation for the design, development, and implementation of the new system. Like I said, we spent approximately 14 months performing the analysis and market research before we even got into the request for proposals, because we wanted to create a specifications that are very ideal for putting in a new utility billing system. We had 12 vendors from across the country. In fact, we had 2 international vendors present proposals to us. We had interviews and demos that were held with 6 vendors. Next slide. We have ultimately chose Systems and Software because they have a history of working with other utilities of our size, and we really liked what we saw with regard to the customer interface, meaning that we have a customer interface that's going to be easy. We're going to design it in a way that's going to be easy for the customer to see all of their bills in one look. But they also have a dashboard for our customer service reps. So when you call the 311 center, customer service reps will be able to answer the calls instead of having to transfer them all the way back into our first floor central cashiering to be able to handle their questions. So we're trying to get to a one-call resolution for our utility bills in the department.
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry. Repeat what you just said.
Sorry?
Could you just repeat what you just said about the one-stop billing?
What we're finding is that when they call into the 311 center, if there's a complicated issue, or if the CSR, the customer service representative at the call center, can't answer the question or can't see the information in a readily available way, in order to get them off the call, in order to be able to answer and not get backed up, they often transfer it over to our first floor. Our first floor is processing payments. They're processing wage tax payments, utility bill payments, property tax payments, the L&I bills, all the checks come in, all of that. If they have to take time away from doing that to answer a phone call on a complicated issue, simply because the CSR at the call center can't read the right information, it's not readily available, it slows everything down. So we get an enormous amount of volume coming through the first floor. What we're trying to do is get an automated system that's going to simplify this for customers. Hopefully it'll be simple enough for the customers not have to call. But if they do call, we're going to have a dashboard that will allow the customer service rep to answer the questions in a more effective way. The cost for this system is going to be approximately $3 million. We're going to allocate another $1 million to be allocated to have Black & Veatch support us through this process. The annual support system costs are going to be $150,000 a year over 6 years. That is everything including upgrades, maintenance on the systems, support for our CSRs if they have a question about the functionality itself. And then they're going to host all of this in a database for about $80,000 a year. So everything is going to be in one central system. These funds had already been approved through the 2022 capital budget. So we've already got the appropriation. What I'm coming to you tonight is to get your approval to go ahead and issue a multi-year contract for this system. Next slide. Project plan, what's the timeline? What's the project plan? We're going to take our time building this out. So starting, we started this in August with the project pre-planning. We think we are going to go with a go live somewhere in the January through March timeframe of 2025. So we're literally going to take 14 months to design it, test it, and we're going to test it before it even becomes operational. If we don't like what we see, we're not going to implement it until we do like what we see. We're going to continue to stay on the old system until we're ready to go. The old system is functional, but we know it's inefficient. We're just going to continue to use that until we get this system in place. Likewise, one of the things I'd like to do during this time is in the design phase, particularly when we start talking about the design of the bill, we want to get some focus group members from the community to come in and talk about utility bills and what they like to see, and some of the ideas with regard to what we'll borrow from, say, Delmarva or Artesian or Suez, to have them, or Veolia, to have them come in and really help us design a good bill so that people can understand it. Because right now, it's confusing for people. It's hard to pay. It's, we have lots of complications with manual entries because people mail them in without coupons and that kind of thing. That's going to be, we're going to try to get some customer input as we design this. So we'll be asking outside people, constituents, people who use the utility system, to come in and focus group on this. Let me say that we'll probably never get to 100% automated system, meaning that customers would use an online payment portal. 100% of the customers would use an online payment portal. We'll still have the mail-in option. But our hope is that if we can get this to be easy enough, people will adopt it and be able to pay their bills online, get real-time credit for the bills being paid on time, so that there is less confusion. So our time frame is really a good 14 months before we're even seeing something like this. But by you approving these ordinances, we can get the contracts approved and started. Now, where does Paymentus fit into this? Paymentus has been our service provider, our payment service provider for the last, at least, they've been here as long as I have, 6 years. They've been here at least 8 years. What we'd like to do, we don't think it's prudent. They're coming up on the first year of their option to renew. So we had a 3-year base contract with a 2-year, 2 1-year options. We're coming up on our first option to renew. What we'd like to do is, I'm sorry.
Hold on. Would you like to speak, Councilmember White? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is the option at whose option?
It's our option.
It's your city's option. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. We're on our option. It's our option to renew. Mm-hmm. We don't think it's prudent to go through a full RFP process for a new payment provider while we're implementing a new utility payment system. We'd like to have them work in harmony. Mm-hmm. Systems and Software Solutions has used Paymentus on multiple occasions. They know the system, and they would be able to to convert and integrate into the new utility payment system. Likewise, under the current Munis system, if you've ever paid a bill online, you have to pull out of your, like if you're going to pay your utility bill, you have to pull out of your utility bill module, payment portal, and go over to the property tax portal to make the separate payment. What we're trying to do is integrate that into one payment portal, so that when you're looking at your account, you can select what counts you want to pay. And then we can program it to have it go to that account and pay principal, just like the ordinance says, pay principal first, and then payment penalties and interest. What we have found, and we changed this back when I first came on board, is that payments really, customers, as they make their payments, they have a hard time paying down the interest charges over time and never getting to the principal of their accounts. That's why you've had this huge accounts receivable. What we want to do is make that simpler for people, so that you would only have a one-stop shop in terms of being able to see your accounts and make a payment on it online. So, the Paymenta system, it's about $300,000 a year. We don't see any necessarily any additional increase to that number on an operating basis. It'll be most likely what we're paying now. Once we get into the design of the system, if there are any increases, certainly we'll come back to you during budget time to see what that looks like. I don't think it's going to be substantial, though. So, that's my presentation.
Okay, well, thank you for that thorough explanation in terms of why this new system is needed. I think the whys and hows and how this is going to work, I think you did a great job with that. I also believe that, based on what you have shared, is that this system is definitely going to be more effective, it's going to be more efficient, and as you have shared with some of the data points, how the money that we're losing, I think is big in terms of us switching over and upgrading, rather, how we're going to be able to recoup the money. And even though it's a pretty huge price tag, eventually we're going to be able to, it's going to pay for itself, just upgrading the system. And one of the things that I know about systems, that periodically you really do have to upgrade to keep up, with the times and make sure that systems are efficient and effective. One of the perks for me, listening to how this is going to work eventually, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that it's going to be a year-over-year savings for our taxpayers. Is that correct?
It will be, what it will be is, when we pay it off
Mm-hmm.
in 3.5 years, we're going to not lose. It's more not necessarily a savings directly to the customer, but it means that our revenue will increase.
Correct.
Our costs will be lower,
Yes.
and therefore that creates more to the bottom line in our water sewer fund. Therefore, we will not have to have water and water sewer rate increases to the extent that we do now.
Yes, and I didn't mean savings to the customer.
Right, yeah.
I meant
Mhm.
collectively, in terms of like what you just mentioned, the rates are not going to go up, as much, and et cetera.
Precisely.
So that's what I feel that eventually is definitely a win. It's a win-win for our customers being able to go out and navigate on the system. I know I've gone out several times paying my bill online, and one of the things you said too that I think is great is sometimes the payments are not always posted. Mine now for the last year has been automatically, deducted, and how sometimes it's not getting posted. I couldn't figure that out. Like I would see it on the next bill, and I know that it's automatically deducted. So
Yep.
it sounds like to me that this is going to also eliminate that little glitch because, like I said, I couldn't understand like if it's automatically deducted, how it's not on time and why it would show up on my next month bill. So anyway, I just
Agreed.
wanted to say thank you for
Yep.
that great overview. Any other council member Oliver?
Thank you, Brett. How you doing tonight?
Very well, thanks. Thank you for seeing me.
My question is, with this automated system, how many jobs, or will there be any job reductions? I know in the past, so I'm gonna let you answer that question since you're saying, because when we start getting to the automated billing process, such as the 311, some individuals who have been here for years lost their jobs. So I would like to hear of the job loss or job reduction, or if individuals be moving in other departments, because when you start talking about automated systems, somebody or some bodies will be removed. Could you answer that, please?
Sure. It is not my intention to have any staff reduction. In fact, it is my viewpoint that we're spending so much time in transactions, dealing with transactions. In fact, multiple iterations on the same transaction,
So
right?
So let's stick with the question. So let me just stay here because we went through this with the 311. I'm just asking a question. You said it's not your intent. I'm asking you, will there be few jobs reduced or moved around to various departments?
No.
Okay. Another question is a follow-up, Madam
Yes.
Chair.
Yes.
So when you say, as you're talking about the 311 complaints, and we're talking about getting a whole nother system, I was under the impression that the 311 call system would be handling some of these calls. Now you're saying we're gonna have a 311 system plus another automated system?
No.
Okay, could you explain that?
The 311 system is staffed by call takers.
Mm-hmm,
They're the initial point of contact coming into the city.
mm-hmm.
The automated system will be given to the 311 call center call takers. In fact, they're going to see the exact same thing everybody else sees. So when a customer calls in, they'll be able to see the SNS system and see all of the bills that the customer is looking at.
Follow-up, Madam Chair.
Yes.
So 311 now is going to see everything, and that all the billing. So that's really confusing because 311 now, I've called it, we've had various people call it. They're from out of state. They've said to several people, I don't know what side of town you're talking about. Not saying it's not a bad system, but because these individuals from out of state, now we're going to allow 311 callers from out of state be talk about individuals billing, or just to tell them where to go?
Well, they have access now to the Munis system and will often answer a customer's question right now. So what
I know.
this system's going to replace that Munis interface and actually have more detailed information that will allow them to answer the question.
Follow up. Madam Chair.
Yes, I want to be able to
Excuse
get
me one
other
second.
Yeah.
round
I
of.
may only have this last one, I'm done.
Okay.
Oh, I could come back.
Okay, go ahead if that's your last one.
No, I'll come back because I did.
You sure? I just wanted to get
that-
a round from some of the
Sure.
other council members.
Sure.
I know that council member Bracy has a question. I believe she's on the line. Council member Bracy?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. This, Director Taylor, I have a question. It's related, but not really. As you're thinking about this new system and implementing this new payment system, I know during budget hearing, we talked a lot about how we automate payments in other portions of the city. For example, when folks renew their business licenses. At this point, you have to come in. Are you thinking long-term about how this new payment system and the upgrades could be integrated into other parts of city operations?
I'm going to answer it this way. Yes, in that I'm thinking about, yes. However, this system is not going to take care of that, and I'll explain in a minute. This system is what they call a premise-based system. It is based on the parcel number of the property that you live in, right? In fact, we can look up utility bills, property tax bills, and L&I bills based on those parcels. Business licenses are not parcel-based, right? So the idea is that this system is not going to be able to facilitate that. This is for just those 3 areas. I will say that I've already started this process of discovery and market research for bringing business licenses, wage taxes, and net profit taxes online. That way, customers who want a business license, who wish to file their wage taxes, who wish to pay their wage taxes or their net profit taxes, will be able to do that online. I'm going to take the exact same posture that I did with the utility billing system. And that is, I'm going to be spending the next year doing the discovery and market research to find the best system to bring that online. It's just that this system, because it's a premise-based system, will not do that. There is no system out there, and this is based on our market research. There's no system out there that would be able to do all of that on one system. Even our Munis system, which was intended to do that, does not have all of the capability to make it easy for people to be able to do that. That we don't have a business, our wage tax system, we have a wage tax module in Munis. However, all of our companies and individual LLCs, they hand in paper wage tax forms. Same thing with business licenses. When people come in to make a business license, they go to a window, they fill out a form. All of a sudden, you know, we give them a business license right there and then. They have to come in, or they put it into a Dropbox and we mail it to them. There's no reason why we can't have an automated system. So the short answer to your question is yes. As I mentioned in the budget hearing, we are going to have a business license, online business license platform. But no, it's not going to be built into this particular system.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Bracy. Do you have any other questions before I move on?
No, that's it. Thanks, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Councilmember Spadola.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Director Taylor. I've always appreciated your embracing of technology, and I urge you to continue to seek innovative solutions that allow Wilmington to be a more responsive, efficient, streamlined, and lean government. This is a step in that direction. It will resolve some of the payment issues that I've emailed you about. I love the focus group idea. My question, before it's officially rolled out in January 2025, are you going to, similar to the focus group, are you going to roll it out to a small test population where they will be using it to pay their bills prior to the full release?
Yes,
Okay.
Yep.
You want to volunteer right here?
absolutely. Yep.
Happy to do it.
No,
I will
we're-
find some vulnerabilities.
That's all going to be part of it. We'll have it in a production setting, and we're going to design it. We're just going to, we're just going to test it, and we're going to use outside customers to do it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
That's awesome. I want to say, Director Brett, so how do you plan to identify the individuals for the focus group?
I haven't really thought that far ahead, but
Okay.
we can certainly solicit them from city council members. We'll probably reach out to you and ask,
Okay.
okay, since you have you know, you have a little bit more of a connection with the community, you can get those community groups in.
Okay.
I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, I just thought, I thought about it when
Yeah.
council members.
We're still a little ways out, and when we get
yeah.
into that testing phase, we'll roll that out.
Understood, understood. Are there any other council members, Field?
Yes, Mr. Taylor, I want to salute these efforts. This has been an excellent presentation, and I second the comments of my colleagues. I just have one question, though. I mean, because there are quite a few residents that came of age after the internet and technology really took over in terms of digital. And there's a lot of high rises in my district, and a frequent complaint has been how maybe the over digitalization of government documents. And so my question is, will there be an option for those who to pay, if need be, by conventional means, even in the best case scenario in 2025, when this is implemented in Wilmington?
Yes, absolutely. We're going to continue with a mail-in option as well as a walk-in option.
That's great.
In fact,
Okay, thank you.
in fact, if it's my desire, you know, you could also make a phone call and be able to give a credit card number over the phone. That way, they wouldn't have to. The best customer is one that doesn't have to walk into the city of Wilmington in order to make their payment. But I do recognize and I do acknowledge that there are individuals out there that would prefer to talk to a live person and be able to make that payment over the phone. If they want to walk in, we'll still have that option.
Great. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Is that all? All right, Councilmember White?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have several questions. Director, again, thanks for your presentation.
Sure.
My first question is, you say that, or it's in your report, that Black and Veatch, am I saying that correct?
Veatch.
Veatch said that we would save 3.5 million?
Actually, we're losing 3.5 million
Okay, thank you.
and,
And
saving
that was
saving 2.5.
that was a consultant's report, correct?
That's correct.
Do we have a copy of that report?
I can certainly share it with you.
May I request a copy of that report? You also, follow-up question?
Yes.
You also mentioned, and I want to be sensitive to this, but you also mentioned that rates would not go up as much. What was that based on?
If we are able to pull back, if we were able to capture that $3.5 million, that certainly has an effect on the rate picture because revenue's coming in. We're also going to be able to reduce some of our costs as a result.
Yeah,
So hopefully, it's, you know, we wouldn't have to be compensating for the loss of that.
yeah. And my only
Loss of
concern, Director, is that we may be given some false notions regarding what the public may or may not pay without enough information. That's all. And I don't want to be held to a comment or conversation about rates when all the facts may not be in. That's my only comment for the public. Also, the amendment to the contract, amendment number 4 to the master agreement effective date December 12, 2020. This has already been signed?
This is for the Paymentus contract?
Yes, I'm sorry.
The Paymentus contract, remember, we are on a 3-year contract with 2 one-year options. This is an amendment to that contract.
My only question, has this already been signed?
The amendment?
Yes.
No, it has not.
So in your amendment is that you have item 2.3, you delete it in its entirety and is replaced with a new Schedule A payment fee schedule,
Yes, sir.
but I don't see that new payment fee schedule.
We'd be happy to get you a copy of that. We'll give you the old one and the new one.
Thank you. And lastly, this Paymentus agreement, was this approved by law? Has law reviewed this?
Yes. In fact, they drafted the ordinance upon review of the contract that was brought in.
Okay, thank you. Madam Chair, just a few more questions if you don't mind.
Yes.
I too echo Councilwoman Oliver's staff reduction concerns. You mentioned that 311 would be involved in resolving some of these calls.
Correct?
And does that require additional training?
We would train the 311 call centers to look at, yes. Once the new system is up, we will retrain them to look at the new system.
And my follow-up question, is all the training costs, staffing costs reflected in this new agreement?
Yes. In fact, in the systems and software is going to provide all of that as part of the $3 million contract.
And do you have a break, so, and the last question.
Sure.
So you have a breakdown of the contract that you're going to send the new one and the old one,
I can send you both.
correct? And
Well,
then-
I won't have a new one I won't have an old one for the systems and software because that's a brand new contract.
But in that is training? Is
Yes.
a training number? No further questions, Madam Chair. Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you. I just want to mention that Director Charlotte Barnes, she sent out an email with some discussion items on it. And Kendra is going to be sending it out to all of the council members. I'm sorry. Not this one? Oh, okay. All right. The next subject matter. All right. Right. So, do we have any other council members that have any questions as it relates to this ordinance 23-036?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes, Councilmember Oliver?
So, Mr. Brett, by the way, I'd like to give you kudos for the great job. You know, you always help me out. So you're saying this is going to be $150 cost every year with this new system?
Yes, it's going to be an operating cost, which will be built into our budget starting in FY 2025.
So you expect it to be in, okay. So not 2024, you're saying you expect this to be in the budget in 2025?
Correct.
Okay.
We'll be presenting this coming into the budget season, starting in January through March.
And I too would like to see that budget, because when you start talking about the dashboard and the 311s, it's definitely going to have to be some additional training, because you're talking about young men and women who are just trained for customer service, and now we're saying we're going to train 311 calls for individuals from out of state to handle. I think this is good, but I think some of this needs to stay internally for individuals who know how to do the job, so we don't move them out of their jobs once again. So I just like to put that on the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Oliver. Are there any other council members that have questions? If not, I'm going to go to the public. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak? If so, please raise your hand, and when recognized, state your name for the record. So it doesn't look like we have anyone from the public that wishes to speak. This is an ordinance, and it has to be voted out of committee. So at this time, I am going to ask, is there a motion to move out of this committee ordinance 23-036?
Motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. The ordinance has been voted out of committee. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carried. Okay. So, Director Taylor, our next ordinance, which is 23-037, did you include information in this whole discussion that we just had, or are we get ready to have a new
It's all
discussion?
part of, that's all part of it. The Paymentus, the one ordinance is for Paymentus, The other ordinance is for
software?
systems and software.
For the software. Okay, so I wanted to just make it clear to those that are listening that we pretty much had the discussion regarding ordinance 23-036 as well as ordinance 23-037, all in the last discussion. So we will be voting out ordinance 23-037. So, having said that, is there a motion to move out of committee ordinance 23-037?
Motion.
No, you never asked for a question. You just said we discussed it, but it still, is there a question on this first? I mean, we discussed it, but that was the one ordinance we was talking about the other, because I have a question.
Yes.
Sorry.
So if there is anyone that have a question regarding ordinance 23-037, you are welcome to ask that question at this time. Councilmember Oliver?
Sorry about that. Yes, I know we discussed it, but I was really looking at the other ordinance, and I'm familiar with this also. I just want to be clear, I think this is also good, but the extension of this duration of the master service.
Hold on. If we are going to talk about this ordinance, I will be glad to read it. Okay. So the synopsis for ordinance 23-037 basically states the ordinance authorizes the city to execute. Is that what you are alluding to, council member? Because you was about to read.
More on. Let me see something.
So that's the second ordinance. We already voted.
We on
Oh,
3-7, right?
yes, ma'am. So I can read the synopsis for that
Sure.
one? Okay. All right, so the synopsis for ordinance 23-037 reads, the ordinance authorizes the city to execute 4 agreements, namely a software license agreement, software implementation services agreement, support and maintenance agreement, and hosting service agreement with Systems and Software Incorporated for software and related services for utility billing. The fiscal impact of this ordinance is for 3-year agreements with the possibility of 3 additional extensions of 1 year thereafter, and an estimated price of $4 million if all of the extensions are exercised. So I guess the point that I want to make is that did we talk about that $4 million in this conversation? Or is there something that you feel that needs to be underscored or amplified as it relates to that?
I don't think there's anything else that needs to be underscored.
Okay, because I thought we talked about that as well.
We did.
In the last conversation, but
Yep.
I do appreciate Councilmember Oliver for pointing it out for those that are listening that could get confused.
Comes
Councilmember,
together as a package.
yes, okay, but
Right.
there is 2 separate ordinances for
Correct.
whatever reason, but that's fine. Councilmember Oliver?
Thank you. For the public, I'm just trying to make it clear that it is, we stated it was 2. I want to specify it's 2 different packages. One was ordinance 036, one is ordinance 037. We discussed it, but just to say it's a package, we need to be clear on the package because it's 2 different packages. Okay. So the fiscal impact for this particular ordinance is $4 million. The other one was totally, but we just discussed them both. My question for this one is this, the software license agreement, service agreement, and support maintenance. This is new or this ongoing?
Portion, okay, so it's. gonna
Portion
be-
of it is new, portion of it
Portion
is,
of it is new,
that's what I want
yeah.
to make clear.
and the other is ongoing.
Okay, just want
Yes.
the public to know.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes. Councilmember White?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Councilwoman Oliver, for making that distinction. And Director,
Speaking to your mic. so-
I'm sorry. For the record, I just want to know, these extensions are at whose option?
It's our option.
It doesn't say, Does it say it in the agreement, or should I fish through it, or?
It would be through the agreement.
Okay, all right. So all options are at the city's option?
Correct.
All right. And this software package includes training?
Yes. The systems and software package includes training, correct.
And do we own the product, or who owns the product once it's integrated?
They own the product. It's effectively we will have licensed seats. They will own the product. We keep the data. They do not own our data. If that's the next,
That would be the
I
next.
want to make sure that we're real clear about that.
Right. And last question, Madam Chair, and you'll send over confirmation of that highlighted in the agreement?
Yes, I'd be happy
Thank
to
you.
do that.
No further questions, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you, Councilmember White. Are there any questions from the public as it relates to ordinance 23-037? If none, I'm going to ask, is there a motion at this time to move ordinance 23-037 out of this committee?
Motion.
Thank you. It's been properly moved and seconded. The ordinance has been voted out of this committee. All those that are in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carried. Both of these ordinances will be on the next council agenda, which is Thursday, October the 19th. And for all the council members that have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to Director Taylor. Thank you.
Thank you very much for entertaining these
Thank you.
ordinances.
Thank you for
Appreciate it.
the very good overview. Okay, we're going to move on to our next items on the agenda. We have a resolution review, Fraternal Order of Police Rank and File Collective Bargaining Agreement, July 1, 2021 to June 30th, 2024. Who's here to speak to this resolution review?
Madam Chairwoman, I am.
Who's that?
This is Director Charlotte Barnes.
Okay, hi, thank you. All right.
Good afternoon, how are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you. Okay, Director Barnes, you can, the floor is yours.
Okay. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, and honorable members of council. I was asked to provide an overview of the collective bargaining agreements for the Fraternal Order of Police. And you should have a slide presentation that I believe is going to be shared on the screen. And I can walk through that slide presentation.
Okay.
So as we're looking at the slide presentation, just by way of agenda, I'm just going to provide a brief overview of who's covered by the agreements and the term, and then I'll talk a little bit about the terms of the agreements. Key changes. Each of these agreements are probably in the neighborhood of 30 to 50 pages long. So I'll provide key changes and what has changed from the existing agreement. And then I'll talk a little bit about the fiscal impact of both of these agreements, and then try to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, by way of overview, the Fraternal Order of Police has two collective bargaining units. One is for rank and file, and one is for captains and majors. The rank and file unit covers the ranks from recruit to lieutenant. There are approximately 302 covered employees when all the positions are filled, but that would be that many positions covered by that bargaining agreement. The other bargaining agreement is the captains and majors. And so I'll pause here. You probably have recently heard it referred to as captains and inspectors. There was a change when you passed the operating budget back in May. There was a change that changed their title from inspector to major, and we incorporated that change into the contract. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear, that bargaining unit to which we are referring in terms of captains and majors was previously captains and inspectors. And it covers the ranks of captains and majors. There are 9 employees covered, 7 captains and 2 majors. Next slide, please. So one of the collective bargaining agreements is has been in existence for over almost 3 years now. We are about 9 months away from expiration. That's the rank and file. That contract covers the period from 7/1/21 through 6/30/24. And I anticipate that in the spring, we will begin negotiations for a successor contract for the rank and file. The captains and the majors is a newer agreement. It began 7/1/23 and it extends through 6/30/25. And that one was recently we recently negotiated. We recently dissolved that one. So those are the terms of those 2 agreements. Next slide, please. So I'll take rank and file first and talk a little bit about the major changes that were implemented with this particular bargaining agreement. We moved to a seniority-based pay scale. So previously, our ranks, the pay scale topped you out at a particular rank, whichever rank you were, and then the only salary increases you would get would be if we negotiated a successor agreement and whatever cost of living adjustment that was. We moved to a seniority-based pay scale with this agreement, and so now from years 1 through 25, you know where you're going, and then after, I believe it's after year 10, every other year, when you move to the next step, there is a 2% salary increase in between each step. You go to that step based on the completion of a satisfactory performance evaluation. And then it even has beyond year 25, year 27, 29, and 31, you would still also get that 2%. There are no further increases after year 31 in the department if you are a member of this bargaining unit. We also implemented spousal coordination with this bargaining unit effective 7/1/23. So if you're you have a spouse and that spouse has the ability to be covered by their employer, they would have to be on that employer's benefits. We keep the children. We do not force children to be on a different plan, but your spouse, if your spouse is employed and can be covered by their employer, they have to take their employer's coverage. We discontinued domestic partner benefits. Previously, there was a provision in our policies that you could cover a domestic partner provided you met certain criteria. Well, if we're not going to cover a spouse, it extended that we would not continue to cover domestic partners. So that was discontinued effective 7/1/23. Another key change in this contract is that for anyone hired after July 1, 2022, there's a mandatory retirement age at 57. So anyone that's on the force before July 1, 22, they are not required to retire by age 57, but prospectively, anyone hired after July 1, 2022, there's a mandatory retirement age at 57, which is in line with the federal government and other municipalities as well. Also, since we're going to require you to retire at age 57, the maximum age for which you could be hired as a new recruit is 37. And that's just to ensure that if you come on at 37 and you have to retire at 57, at 20 years, you would be eligible for your pension. So those were not all, but key changes that were made in the rank and file agreement that was negotiated. Okay. Next slide, please. The other thing we did with captains and majors, similar to what was done in captains and inspectors, we implemented spousal coordination, but their date is 7/1/24. We discontinued domestic partner benefits, and I see a typo on the slide. That should be 7/1/24 as well. With this bargaining unit, we extended the amount of accrued leave that can be converted to terminal leave. So there's once an officer reaches a certain amount of number of days or hours in accrued sick leave, that sick leave can be converted at a 50% rate to terminal leave. So we extended the amount that can be converted to terminal leave for this bargaining unit. We also capped the amount of comp time. So officers have the ability to accrue comp time, and there's a statutory limit upon which you would max out. And we just implemented that within the contract because some members had already had more than the statutory requirement. So we capped that comp time to align with the statute. And then we clarified a provision with majors with less than 20 years of service, their retirement provisions, should they be promoted to major and not be retained. It clarifies what happens in situations like that. There was already language in the code that was very clear. We just made sure that we clarified for any ambiguity that individuals thought was out there. Next slide. The fiscal impact for both of these agreements. So rank and file, those are flipped, I'm sorry. Rank and file cost about $7 million over the 3 years. And those costs were included in the mayor's 5-year projections, as well as each year when we budget, it's in, those costs are factored in there. And captains and majors, their contract over the next 3 years will be, the cumulative impact over the 3-year period is about $650,000. And again, those figures are included prospectively into the 5-year projections that are presented to City Council. That concludes my presentation, Madam Vice Chair, and I'll be happy to try to answer any questions from council members.
Thank you, Director Barnes. So the fiscal impact of the 650 and the 7 that's savings?
No. That's what it's going to cost us to implement those contracts. When we implemented the rank and file contract in year 1, it was $1.9 million. We've already spent that money. In year 2, it was $2.1 million. And in this current fiscal year, the cost of that contract is $3.1 million. But it's already factored into the projections. It's already factored into the cost when you adopt the budget.
Okay, thank you. The reason why I had asked that question is because I know you mentioned we discontinued spousal coverage if they had coverage. So automatically I'm thinking that that's a major savings for us. So, but I think that's just a different figure other than what it's going to cost. I was really, thinking about like, what is the savings for that? It has to be a pretty, high number that we
any
now
savings
discontinued.
that are attributed are netted against the cost of the contract.
Okay.
And so citywide, when we did the strategic plan for benefits, citywide, the cost of implementing spousal coordination across the entire workforce would save about $1.6 million. So, most people are just, FOP was the first bargaining unit to sign on to it, and it was effective 7/1/23. Every other bargaining unit and non-union employees, that kicks in 7/1/24, and then Local 320, it kicks in for them on 6/30/2026.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any questions, Councilmember Spadola?
Yes, thank you. Madam Chair, if I could, I want to talk about a broader issue as it relates to union contracts not coming to the council prior to this one, and lay some groundwork if I could.
Understood.
Thank you. I should say, for the council members on the line, this is the first union contract you have seen in your time on council. And why is that? Because none have come before this council. Despite, if you look at the ordinance that we just approved, it very plainly says, the City of Wilmington is authorized to enter into contracts for the supply of personal property or the rendering of services for a period of more than 1 year if approved by City Council by ordinance. The plain interpretation of the city charter, to me, that's a slam dunk that any labor contract that exceeds 1 year needs to come before this council, not just for review, but for approval before implementation. Unfortunately, that is not the viewpoint that is held by the city solicitor, and it was their viewpoint that what I just said was not accurate. I am awaiting a further reply from the city solicitor about that. We've been waiting since August, because I think it's concerning. Additionally, we all know our biggest vote is the budget. Our biggest responsibility to the city is the financial stewardship of taxpayer funds. Labor costs are at least 1/3 of the city's entire expenditures.
Right.
If we have no say whatsoever over a union contract, as the authority is given to us by the charter, we are not able to do our duty. Additionally, and what I still don't understand, prior to this council, union contracts regularly became before the finance committee, as told to me by the previous finance chair and a previous mayor. I am not sure why the precedent changed and was not communicated, but I think it's something we need to explore. Furthermore, when there's ambiguity in city charters, the city will often look to Newcastle County. Newcastle County Council approves union contracts before they are implemented. Additionally, prior to us vetting this contract, there's no transparency in terms of what is being negotiated. The public wouldn't even know. So I think our review, not just review, but our approval is vital, so the public can see how their taxpayer funds are being used. So I welcome Ms. Barnes or Ms. Mergelin. I know you're just getting thrown into this. You weren't on that email chain, but I welcome if there's any update, more broadly speaking, just about union contracts not coming before the council, or any corrections to anything I said. And actually, Marshall, if we could, Marshall, could you provide any context? Because you were right on it when I raised my initial inquiry.
Councilman Spadola, the city solicitor issued an opinion, and their opinion is that the agreements no longer have to come before council based upon his interpretation. I don't want to speak for the city solicitor, but based upon precedents, yes, those agreements have always came before council for approval. Did council have a say on what any of those items are? It was more of like a, you look at it, you review it, we couldn't make changes, but if there were concerns, council had an opportunity, to express some of the concerns. For example, when FOP, when they changed to a major shift, that was a concern. Not that it was a concern in a good way or a bad way, but, council just wanted it, to have, some discussion to see, what the impact would be. What you have stated is what has been the case that was shared with me since I've been here, as well as former Mayor Baker. He articulated the same thing that you have stated as well.
Thank you, Marshall. And I just want to say that I appreciate Councilmember Spadola for sharing that information. I did learn about what you just shared within the last couple months in terms of how those agreements used to come before council, before the finance committee. And I guess I did hear Marshall mention, Ms. Bass Knight mention, that it was the solicitor's opinion that they no longer come before us, and that's a little concerning in terms of what was the change or what was the reason and why not, especially since we are the legislative branch, we are the balancing branch to these types of things and the transparency of it. So I agree with you wholeheartedly, and I hope that once we get a response, you said that you're waiting on a response?
I was told in August we get a response. We have not received a response yet.
And what is have you, since August?
I followed up and they attributed it to staffing shortages.
Okay, so again, thank you, for sharing that publicly. And I do feel as though it is our responsibility that when we identify situations such as this, that we should bring it to the attention of those that need to be at the table to hear us out, to hopefully, again, be more responsible for more transparency, not only to council, but to the public, because whatever we are privy to, we are allowing the public to be privy to as well. So that is why I support it 100%. And also, we should have the opportunity to be able to understand and be able to explain when questions come to us about these types of agreements. So thank you, Councilmember Spadola. Did you have anything else to say before I go to the next council person? Go ahead.
If I could, yeah, Ms. Barnes, I appreciate this, but I think we should see the full 38-page contract. We weren't told what the percent increases are. We're going to leave this not knowing what the starting wage of a Wilmington police officer is, and I think that's all vital information. And additionally, I also want to go on record, and I brought it up with the previous chief. I brought it up with Chief Campos. Newark Police Department just started a take-home vehicle program for officers, and I think for Wilmington to remain competitive when even smaller agencies are allowing officers to take home their cars, it's something that when the finances are right, I think it's something that we owe it to our officers, especially if it's a tool to keep them in the city. So I just wanted to go on record with that, Ms. Barnes. But again, I would like to see the full contract because I don't think we've been provided adequate information.
Thank you.
Mr. Councilmember Spadola,
Yes.
the contract for the captains and inspectors was requested and provided. I can certainly provide the copy of the contract for the rank and file officers. With respect to your specific question around the starting salary for a police officer, it is $58,093.56. And I do want to add some context to what Ms. Bass Knight indicated. It is accurate that contracts previously came before council for review. She was accurate in stating that there weren't changes made to the contract. It was pretty much more providing insight on what was in the collective bargaining agreement. When the contracts come to city council, they have been ratified by the bargaining unit, and the bringing it before council, it's not my position. I'm not stating a position as to whether or not it should or should not come before council, because that's left to the city solicitor. I will say that when they did come before council, it was more perfunctory in nature. Again, sharing what was in the contract and things of that nature. I've been on the negotiating team for union contracts since 1995, and they did come before the body, and the body did have the opportunity to review. So I did it when I was on the executive side, and then when I was on council, I participated, and now I'm back on the executive side, and I participate as well. They have come before council. But to the point that Ms. Bass Knight made, it wasn't as if changes were going to be made once it got to the body. It was it was sharing and adopting, and probably, along with Mr. Spadola mentioned the fact that it was a multi-year contract. But I just want to be clear that it was more sharing and providing what I just did today, the key provision changes that were in the agreement. But as I indicated, I'll gladly not only provide the contract for the FOP. You're probably aware that we recently negotiated the ASME Local 1102 agreement. I'll provide that. And then the ASME Local 320 agreement. They are under a 6-year agreement, but they had a wage reopener for the last 3 years, and we just resolved that. I can forward all those documents to council. I will take care of that actually this evening when I get off the call.
Thank you, Ms. Barnes.
Thank you, Councilmember Spadola.
If I can just close out my comments, thank you for that. Yeah, I think the disagreement is really over the interpretation of the charter, and my plain interpretation of rendering of services for a period of more than 1 year. To me, a multi-year labor service agreement is a service for a period of more than 1 year. So to me, the contracts should be coming to council for approval, not just review. But we are where we are, and I think it's an issue to be continued. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Councilmember Spadola. Thank you, Director Barnes. Are there any other questions from any other council members regarding this topic? Councilmember Field.
Yes, I would like to second what Councilmember Spadola just mentioned. And I think this is a central part of the duty of City Council, and it's an unfortunate trend, this pushback on responsibilities that were seen as fundamentals to City Council's role for decades being reinterpreted more recently as somehow not a key part of City Council's duties. Reading and reviewing contracts is central, and there has been pushback from the law department saying that no, that's not the case, when the code and the language is quite clear, and it has been confirmed by multiple people in this meeting that it has been past precedent and an expectation. And so I salute Councilman Spadola for bringing this up, and we will continue to push for this because that is a central duty of City Council. And Councilman Spadola, please continue to update the rest of the council on your conversations on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Spadola.
Oh, no, I just said sure thing.
Okay, right, so, Councilmember Field, I agree with you, with what you had to share 100%. And then my last comment on this is this, just because, an opinion has been stated that they don't have to, that still does not excuse the fact if we would like the information, we should be able to get it. So I do think that there is like a little gap there as it relates to an opinion being stated versus us wanting the information. So I don't think it's doing any harm or anything illegal with this council asking to be able, if not to approve these agreements and contracts, most certainly give us the opportunity to review them. And we should not really have to ask to review them. That should be automatic, that we automatically get the opportunity to review these agreements, because number one, we're not even aware of when they're taking place, when the agreements are taking place. So I would love to definitely continue this conversation and be a part of it to make sure that we are being able to do our job and to make sure that due diligence is being done as it relates to this legislative branch. So, Council President Congo?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I guess just following up on the same sentiments of a lot of my colleagues, I guess what's most concerning to me is like the question of why like the spirit of sharing changed. And that's the part that I don't understand. I don't know where it came from. And that's not for Director Barnes to answer, because I don't think it came from her. But I guess that's what's most concerning to me. I don't know where like the spirit of sharing with council just all of a sudden stopped. And we can't even get an answer why. And when Councilman Spadola requested it, he was told that it was a staffing shortage. But if there's enough staff to issue an opinion, there should be enough staff to issue a reason for that opinion. But I'm not going to harp on it, but it's just very concerning as to like the why is what's concerning the most to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President. Any other council members? Anyone from the public wish to speak at this time? Okay, well, if not, this is not an ordinance that needs to be voted out, so I think this was a great discussion, and again, we're looking forward to continuing the conversation. Our next item on the agenda is a resolution review. This is again a review of the Fraternal Order of Police Captain and Inspectors Collective Bargaining Agreement from July 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2026. Ms. Bass Knight?
Yeah, and Ms. Barnes just addressed both of them together.
Together again?
Yes.
Okay, I
Thanks.
thought I heard her mention captains and majors, but I wanted to make sure. So we pretty much combined both of the
Yes.
reviews together for the Fraternal Order of Police rank and file collective bargaining agreement, as well as the police captain and inspectors collective bargaining agreement. And they both are dated from July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, the rank and file ends June 30th, 2024. Captain and inspectors, it ends June 30th, 2026.
If I may, Madam Chair, too.
Ms. Bass Knight?
Yes, thank you. It's just a typo on my part. It should be police captain and majors. They changed their name from inspectors to majors.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so we're going to move on to our last two agenda items. Our update on the ARPA funds. Is there someone here to speak to that? Okay.
Alrighty, good evening, Chair.
Good evening.
Good evening, members of council. Thank you for having me back another month for another presentation. Just waiting for the presentation.
Thank you.
There we go, bottom right. Wonderful. Okay. Could you go to the next slide, please? Okay. First slide, as always, is the amount allocated. As in the previous 2 months, the funds are fully allocated, although there are a couple of minor changes, which I'll go over 2 slides down. If you go to the next slide. This month, I added another slide that shows the amount spent so far. So we start with a total budget of $55 million. Out of that, 34.8 has actually been spent, and that leaves a balance of 20.5 that is encumbered but not yet spent. Next slide, please. Okay. So I realized after our last presentation that I was apparently a little bit too hasty in putting together the presentation. So I wanted to correct a couple of errors in the last one. The first section up top is taken verbatim from the 2023, the September 23 presentation. The parts that I wanted to amend, it should have said $500,000 for the land bank and $400,000 for Delaware Affordable Housing Group. That was for the renovation of the Elwyn building. Then next up, we had originally planned to just put the remaining $60K with NCC Votech, but looking at the projections a bit further, it didn't of the student stipends, it didn't seem like that would be where we would need it most. Instead, we are adding it on to the Allied construction contract. That is construction project management, which we think that'll be ramping up considerably over the next couple of years. So we figured it'd be better spent there. So these next up are changes since last month. So in the previous presentation, we had 1.13 set aside for strategic acquisition. That has been allocated firmly as follows, in some cases reallocated. So 655 has gone to the land bank for strategic acquisition. We gave 250, this is a new project under community investment, 250,000 for the St. Francis Healthy Village program. And then there will be a $114,000 annual cost for the automatic license plate reader camera program, which we had originally intended to put in the operating budget, but since there was a bit of money that we didn't necessarily have set aside for acquisition, we've put there for the cost of the license plate reader cameras. Between all of these funds have to be officially completely under contract by the end of 2024. So this may still change, but for now that's where we have it budgeted. Finally, The $105,000 for the Community Public Safety Initiative mini grants, for which we just got our second round of applications. We decided to pay that from the general fund real estate and housing budget. As I don't know if you've spoken with some of the vendors and grantees in the community. There's a lot of compliance that goes along with the ARPA funds, a lot of providing documentation, a lot of providing, just trying to comply with the United States Treasury standards. We didn't want to place that burden on the very small organizations that are applying for the mini grants. So instead, they will just have to comply with the standards for any grant in the city over $5,000. Instead, since real estate and housing has quite a few ARPA allowable activities, so they're going to house the mini grants in their budget, and then they will spend the same budgeted activities from the ARPA funds instead. So those are the largest changes since the previous month. If you go to the next slide, this is just a breakdown of each category. So this is administrative costs. Again, the only major change here was the increase to the construction project management, which is Allied Construction. Next slide. Building safer communities. As you can see, no real major changes here, except you will not see the mini grants listed, as that is now in the general fund. Next slide. Sorry, community investment, a lot of projects, very small print, but as you can see at the very bottom, that is the new project, the St. Francis Healthy Village program. Next slide. So neighborhood revitalization, only changes since last month. This now, of course, includes the Delaware Affordable Housing Group Elwyn project for $400,000. Which should have been included in the previous presentation, and the $105,000 for real estate and housing. That is the amount of the mini grants that we swapped for general fund funding. Next slide. Workforce development. Only change here, of course, is last month we had added an additional $60K to NCC VOTEC, and now that is no longer there. Next slide. And finally, no changes to revenue replacement or essential pay for essential workers. May I answer any questions?
Any questions from the council members? I have a question.
Sure.
$500,000 for parking garage assistance?
Sure.
What does that cover?
Sure. That was actually one of our earliest projects. That was paired with 2.5 million. I'm sorry, actually, I could be wrong. It could be 25 million from the state, but I think it was 2.5 million. I'm sorry, it was actually that long ago that I am genuinely forgetting. But it was to help cover financial losses due to the pandemic to local parking garages, since they suffered quite a bit while people were no longer working downtown. So the state passed through some of its ARPA money through the city, and we also contributed $500,000 to the same purpose.
Okay, all right. How's things coming along with Christina Cultural Arts Center? We allocated $500,000 so far, only $81,000. So are you doing the invoicing down?
Actually, yes, so the all invoicing kind of happens, it's driven by the grantee. So they submit draw requests to UHY, those are reviewed and then submitted to the city for payment.
Okay.
But Christina Cultural Arts Center, we'll give you one moment. So I know that they just submitted another drawdown.
Okay.
So let's see here. Okay. So we last made a payment in August, and they just submitted another payment. Actually, on the 6th, so on Friday.
Okay.
So that one should go out. I would say maybe in the pay run next week after it's processed. So that would overall, if you give me one moment. So, as of right now, they've spent 83,000 out of 500,000. The most recent draw request was for 50,000. But as I understand it from UHY, they're moving along pretty well. So part of the money is being spent on renovation, and part of it's being used to acquire new property.
Okay, all right, so a lot of these figures on here are from like last year, 2021.
The figures you see on your, so all of the spending is up to date
Right.
for each one as of Saturday. What does the total say there for Christina Cultural Arts Center, for example? It should say 83,175. Let's see.
Yeah, what's really interesting is there are columns here where there's zero total unallocated.
Are unspent. So it's a little, so at the top, you'll see total allocated for the entire category. Then underneath, it's amount spent in project. So amount allocated for project, then amount spent. So some have not drawn down. So say underneath community investment, there is one project where they have not submitted a drawdown request yet.
Okay.
But all of the other ones where you see, an actual amount in the column, that means that is money that has actually gone out the door.
Right.
Yeah. So I see that I had 34,000 for. Hang on. Yep. Yeah. So for Christina Cultural Arts Center, you see that they were allocated $500,000. So far, 83,175 has been spent, leaving a balance of 416. Now that 83 does not include the drawdown that is currently pending of
Right.
50,000. So in the next presentation, you'll see that that will be at least $130,000 worth of money gone out the door.
Going out the door. And my last question is this: community investment, that's like a very general topic, title. What falls under community investment?
So that was part of the resolution passed by council at the very beginning that kind of split the
Okay.
spending into different categories. But let me pull up the resolution real quick. and I
Okay,
can tell you
yeah, it's
exactly
been a
what
while. I wanted to make sure.
I know, time goes by fast. Let's see
So-
here. So,
That's the total of all these categories, I think, project details.
so community investment. All right. It is to assist nonprofits in restoring COVID-impacted programming for communities.
Okay, I'll follow up later with the detail.
But essentially, that category was meant to go. It was a set aside for nonprofits, essentially. So, community organizations who are doing work in the community and who say maybe suffered a loss of funding during the pandemic due to people not making as many donations
Right.
as they typically would. That's why, yeah, if you look at the number at the organizations underneath who receive funding in that category, it's almost entirely either nonprofits or local small businesses.
Okay, I remember now. Yeah, this goes back to 2021, I think.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the resolution was passed
Right.
in.
Any other questions from any other council members?
Yeah, December 9th, 2021.
Right, yeah, that 2021 definitely rung a bell. Any other council members, any questions? Ms. Bass Knight?
I'm not a council member, but, okay, just one question, Stephanie.
Sure.
For the funds for the mini grants, so the money since it's now gonna come from real estate and housing, which account line is that coming from? Is it their disposition, or is it another account
Nope,
line?
it will go out of grants to agencies.
Grants to agencies. And what was those funds previously for, that they have there now?
So it was transferred from, let's see, 101, 191, 53108, I believe. I would have to double check. It's either 53108 or 54605. But essentially, it was it was either miscellaneous programming or miscellaneous projects. But the funds were originally budgeted for non-HUD housing activities. So there's always a certain, it was out of an entire pool of $300,000 budgeted for non-HUD related housing, which the department budgets for every year, given that not all of the housing activities are necessarily going to be eligible for HUD funding. Since even though they may not be eligible for HUD funding or would make sense under a HUD allocation, or we simply might not have enough money in the HUD funds to cover them, in this case, all completely eligible for ARPA, and therefore it was possible to make that swap.
Okay. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And also with that, what you just mentioned too, is that all going to be eventually linked to the Neighborhood Stabilization Fund, possibly?
It could be, but in this case, since it's general fund, we won't necessarily need to. We expect the mini grants to be fully expended within this fiscal year, so they'll just be fully spent out of the mini grants, and then next year they'll budget the same activities out of the general fund in the same way that they usually do.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So if there are no other questions from council members, is there anyone that wishes to speak from the public? Seeing no hands, we're going to move to our last and final item on the agenda, which is the update on the disparity report.
Yes, so we, James Williams in Economic Development, who usually makes this presentation, let us know last week that he wouldn't be able to attend today due to having to attend a funeral.
Okay.
He sent his presentation earlier this afternoon. Unfortunately, we weren't able to arrange for somebody else to take his place. So if you
Okay.
have any questions about the presentation, please let us know. We will be happy to have him, or if you want to reschedule his presentation for another Finance Committee hearing, please, we can certainly
Okay.
do that.
Okay. So basically, we're not going to get an update on the disparity report in this meeting. We will be getting an update at our next Finance Committee meeting.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So I want to thank everyone for participating tonight. Tonight was great discussion regarding our legislation and agreements that are coming before council, and some that have already been agreed upon. So at this time, with no further ado, is there a motion to adjourn this meeting? I guess, is there a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Councilwoman Bracy or member of the committee?
So move.
Second.
Thank you. It's been properly moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, everyone, and have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.